Well, I made it. That's the headline. By Jane Endicott, reporter. That's my byline.
Jane Endicott, reporter. The first of a new series of dramatic episodes in the life of a bright and charming American girl in the world of today. Thrilling real-life stories, sparkling with humor, romance, and adventure. And now, Jane Endicott, reporter. Our first story entitled, No Job for a Lady.
Here's your headline, kid. Thieves wreck chemical plant.
Yes, 3 times have cat-footed burglars entered the Westburn Dye and Chemical Plant over at Westburn to rifle stores of nitroglycerin manufactured there. But the 3rd time proved fatal. What exactly happened, no one will ever know. But about 3 o'clock this morning, a terrific explosion leveled an entire wing.
Now listen to this, Pete, editorial for tomorrow's paper. The Sword of Damocles, that's the title. Too long have the citizens of Westburn stood close to sudden death. The Press Chronicle draws attention to the fact that the workers at the Westburn Dye and Chemical Plant deserve at least a pretense of protection. But they're not getting it. The premises of the plant are open to all who would enter for whatever purpose. We make this statement in direct contradiction to that of Captain James Endicott, Director of Research at Westburn, who recently declared no person could enter without the proper credentials. We make the statement that anyone can enter, credentials or no credentials, anytime he wishes to enter.
In a small private laboratory in the research department of the Westburn Dye and Chemical Plant, a spare, gray-haired man works alone in the twilight. A door opens softly. His daughter enters.
Dad?
Eh? Oh, Jane, I didn't hear you.
It's nearly 6. The second shift will be on soon. Don't you think it's time you went home and got some sleep?
Oh, I'm all right, Jane. You go on. Don't wait for me. I've got to finish up. Oh, hand me that burner, will you?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Did you, read the editorial in this afternoon's Press Chronicle?
Huh? Oh, yes.
So unfair. Whoever wrote it didn't know what he was talking about. I'd just like to see him try to get in without permission. He'd be thrown out so fast.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Since those thieves blew up the North Wing and themselves as well, Pete Flaherty hasn't had much to write about. Fellow has to do something to whip up local interest and keep people reading his newspaper.
Well, if he's so hard up for local news, perhaps he needs someone to go out and get it for him. You know, Dad, he could use a reporter, couldn't he? There he is, running a newspaper all by himself.
No, Jane, no. Working for Pete Flaherty is no job for a lady. Besides, haven't you got a job?
Dad, as your secretary, I'm the most useless person in the plant, and you know it.
But, Jane, somebody has to be my secretary. Might as well be you.
You don't need a secretary. And it isn't very pleasant knowing that the people you work with realize that the only reason you have a job is because your father is head of research.
Well, there could be worse reasons. Well, what do you want to do?
Well, Mother and I were talking it over last night.
I see. Then it's all settled.
Oh, no, not at all. I want to know what you think. If I really went after a newspaper job, and I know, and I'll bet you know I could handle it, I could...
What's the matter?
That door behind you.
Well,
opening.
Come in.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if I'd come to the right office.
Oh, this is a private laboratory.
So I see. I was looking for Captain Endicott. He sent me from one place to another around this joint till I'm dizzy.
Who sent you?
Oh, various people around the place. I'm from the Press Chronicle. Captain Endicott told me to meet him here.
No person is allowed inside unescorted, Mr.
Jervis. Anthony Jervis. How are you?
Particularly not here in the research department.
What? You mean this is the... Well, I didn't realize I was on sacred ground to take my shoes off.
You're not funny.
You say you know Captain Endicott?
Why, you bet we're practically bosom buddies. Say, miss, haven't I seen you before someplace?
Mr., since when have you been working on the Press Chronicle?
Since 2 days ago. I'm new to this town, but I hope to know it better, much better. The name's Jervis. Anthony Q. Jervis.
Oh, Q, huh?
Yeah, Quintus. Silly, isn't it? Some people say it's Q for quits.
Quit?
Yeah. There's a rumor that when I was born, my father looked down at me and then at my mother and said, "Let's call it quits."
Young man, before you go, would you mind pressing that button behind you? I've got to get on with my work.
Why, of course. There you are. Oh, I guess I've been a nuisance, haven't I?
Yes.
But could you tell me where... Say, Isn't that a high-temperature electric furnace I've turned on?
Huh? Oh, yes, indeed.
Yeah.
You've seen them before, I suppose.
Never. Say, isn't it time for you people to knock off? After all, it's after 6, isn't it?
Yes. Were you counting on it?
Yes, sir. Did you sound the alarm, sir?
Oh, yes. Come in, Stephens. I think you'd better put this young man under arrest.
Wait a minute. What goes on?
All right, you. Come along.
Hey, now, wait a minute. Take your mitts off me. What is
All right,
this?
boys. Come in and get him.
No, you can't do this to me. I'm a reporter. I want to see Captain Endicott. Call my paper. Call Pete Flaherty.
Get outside.
Hey, cut it out, will you?
Get out.
Come on, cut it out.
Well, pretty neat, Dad, making him press that alarm button himself.
I wonder who he is.
Do you think he really works for the Press Chronicle?
Well, you might call up and find out. There's the phone.
Okay. Hello, switchboard. Will you please get the Press Chronicle office for me? And Father, reporter or no reporter, that young man's going to stay in jail for a while.
Yes, but I got Captain Endicott's call, all right. I was just waiting here for you to show up and verify it. Okay, Hannon, you can turn loose that guy in cell 5.
Thank you, Sergeant.
And we could hold him for trespassing, you know.
Well, we'd rather not, thank you, just the same.
Do him good to spend the night in the jail. It was time he was taught a lesson.
You know him?
I'll say, just joined up with the paper, invested money in it. Moved into town with his mother a couple of weeks ago. I guess Flaherty knows a sucker when he sees one.
Oh.
And here he comes now. Well, sorry to see you leave so soon.
The pleasure's all mine, Sergeant. Well, if it isn't Test Tube Tessie, the laboratory Lulu.
Yeah, and you can thank her for not having to spend the night in a cell. Now, scram, beat it.
Why, you mean you?
One of these days, Mr. Jervis, those smart alecky tricks of yours are going to get you into trouble. Good night, Sergeant.
Good night, miss.
Hey, wait a minute. Oh, hold on. I want to apologize.
You needn't bother.
Oh, but I want to. I'm sorry, I really am. I didn't mean to cause you any trouble.
Oh.
I want to thank you.
Perfectly all right. I suppose your reason for crashing the chemical plant was to cause a number of people to lose their jobs.
Oh, no, it's not that at all. The Press Chronicle is merely fighting for the good of the entire community, the common interest. If the plant stops operating through inefficiency or carelessness, Westburn would be practically a ghost town. Then where would my paper be? Hey, see how it ties up? It means something to me.
Oh.
Now, those old codgers at the gates aren't tough enough. You know how I got past them? It'll give you a laugh. I got a big yellow badge used to identify one of the poultry judges at last year's fair. Stuck it on my chest, and that old guy at the gate didn't even look twice when I walked in.
Very clever, Mr. Jervis. You'll have a fine story, won't you?
And how? Just wait till old Endicott reads it.
Your bosom buddy.
Yeah. I did want to see him, though. Actually, I've never laid eyes on him.
I knew that.
Oh, did you? How?
He was the gentleman in the laboratory who ordered your arrest.
Oh, well... What? You mean that skinny old guy with...
That was Captain Endicott.
Oh, you're kidding me. He didn't look like any old soldier to me.
Captain Endicott holds the DSC, the Croix de Guerre with palms, and a few other souvenirs of the last war, including a silver plate in his skull.
Oh. I guess I'm not very bright, am I?
Such humility is more than refreshing. Well, here's my car. Good night, Mr. Jervis.
Oh, wait, I want to thank you again for what you did. I mean, getting me out of the Bastille.
That's perfectly all right, Mr. Jervis. At the very worst, your partner, Mr. Flaherty, would have sobered up enough by morning to post bail for you.
Oh, you're an optimist.
Good night, Mr. Jervis.
No, wait, I left my car in front of the plant. Would you mind driving me over to the newspaper offices?
Your car is parked across the street where the police put it, as you very well know. If you'll step away from the door of my
word,
car...
so it is.
Why are you such a liar?
I don't know. I guess I'm just a bad boy.
Look, Mr. Jervis, you're a grown man. Act like one. Stop posing.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. Well, good night, Miss, what is your name?
Jane Endicott.
Jane... What was that?
Endicott.
That's what I thought you said.
Well, good night.
Yeah, well, wait. Captain Endicott is your...
My father, yes.
Oh, everything has to happen to me.
I repeat, good night, Mr. Jervis.
All right, get in.
What? Wait a minute. Where are you going?
I'm going with you. Come on, get in. I'll tell you about it on the way to the Press Chronicle office. Miss Endicott, I have a proposition I think you'll be interested in. Let's go.
I brought your dinner, Dad.
Thanks, Jane. Oh, did you release that reporter?
Yes, I just sort of had to. Oh, how much longer will you be here at the plant?
Oh, not long. I suppose he'll spend the rest of the night writing how badly he's been mistreated.
I don't think so, Dad.
Don't you? You don't think he will?
No, because I'm writing that story myself.
What?
I am. Cross me off your factory payroll, Dad. I've joined the Press Chronicle staff.
Are you joking?
No, not a bit. I'm the woman's page editor. Mr. Jervis gave me the job. He owns half the paper.
You mean that young man who...
Yes. Funny, isn't it?
My word. Sudden, isn't it?
I hardly believe it myself yet.
But Jane, does it offer you any future?
Future? Oh, well, it's a bit early yet, Dad, but he's waiting outside for me now. Good night, darling, and try to get home before we do, won't you?
We'll tell you more about Jane Endicott in just a moment.
By Jane Endicott, reporter. And darn good, too. Can't forget my byline. By Jane Endicott, reporter.
Jane Endicott, reporter. Another dramatic episode in the life of an American girl in the world of today. Stories of adventure, romance, and humor. Our story today, headlined Girl Bites Dog, somehow involves a forest fire, too. It's all very bewildering. And now, Jane Endicott, reporter. Today's episode headlined Girl Bites Dog.
Hurry! The woods are burning. Flood going straight out of the oil field. Stop all cars. We need men. Hurry!
Come on, put your backs in it. We gotta get those trees down before the flames hit us. That fire gets past us. Goodbye, Caballero oil field. In the editorial rooms of Westburn's only newspaper, the Press Chronicle, Pete Flaherty, the editor-in-chief, looks up eagerly as his partner, Tony Jervis, breezes in.
Hey, Pete. I just had the Forest Ranger headquarters on the phone.
Stop the presses! Stop the presses!
Hey, they got that fire under control. It's okay now. The oil field's out of danger, Pete.
Well, ain't that lovely? The greatest story we've ever had shot to pieces.
Story? What story?
The one I wrote about the fire. 1,000 oil wells blowing skyward in a maelstrom of blazing death and destruction. Westburn surrounded by a ring of flame. Explosions blasting
But Pete, you haven't even been near the fire.
I didn't have to be. I saw it all mentally.
Oh, you better throw that crystal ball out of the window before it gets us into trouble. Hey, Jerkins! Jerk that oil field yarn out and get ready to set up another story to take its place. Make it snappy. We're 6 hours past the deadline already. Well, she's rolling at last.
Only I was just thinking. How do you suppose that fire got started?
Pete, I'm asking you for the last time, stop dreaming up stories. I've invested too much money in this sheet to make it a laughingstock.
This fire was no mere accident.
Huh? How do you figure that?
It was simple. The wind was blowing in just the right direction to bring the fire down to the Caballero oil field, if unchecked. It doesn't happen every day. I smell it right.
Well, don't look at me.
Well, figure it out for yourself. I'll give you the background. Old Benjamin Wench, who owns everything in this town, including this very building, also owns the Caballero oil field. And he didn't get it by playing Santa Claus. Why, the idiot who owned Caballero property didn't even know what it was all about until Winch had the land. Got it for a song, too. Naturally, the previous owner has it in for him. Going to get revenge. Hey, you see how it adds up? The fire, the wind blowing the right way.
Oh, forget it. You and your pipe dreams.
Tony, my lad, on a small paper like this, it pays to dig up choice items such as I've just suggested. Builds up local interest. Why, considering the state of our present circulation, we ought to call this paper the Daily Anemia. We've got to have more circulation.
Morning.
Jane!
Well, good morning to you. What can I do?
Oh, Pete, this is the new woman's page editor I told you about.
Oh, that's... What?
Don't you remember? The one I hired.
My dear fellow, you mean you were serious?
Yeah. Jane, meet your other boss, Mr. Peter Flaherty.
How do you do, Mr. Flaherty? I'm very happy to know
Well,
you.
my dear girl, welcome to the Press Chronicle. Oh, Tony, I think you've got something here. Yes, indeed. However, we can't afford to take on a tyro.
Hey, look, Pete, this girl's no amateur. She was editor of her college daily paper. She's good.
Well, excuse me, Tony. I didn't know the editor hadn't been consulted about
Hey, now,
this.
wait a minute. I hired you. See, it's legal.
Well, then I'm resigning. I'd rather not be
Now, wait a minute. Will you wait a minute? Look, Pete, take it from me. Miss Endicott has a good head on her.
Yeah,
She's
so has a glass of beer, but it doesn't mean a thing.
Oh, I'm sorry, gentlemen, but you needn't...
Now, come back here, Jane. Now, Pete, I'm warning you.
One moment, Miss...
The name is Endicott, Jane Endicott, and she's the swellest newspaper woman you'll find west of the Rockies. As a matter of fact, it was she who wrote that interview I had with Captain Endicott, her father.
Oh, it was it? Well, I wondered why you made a comedy piece out of it instead of turning the heat on the old boy. So, I see. Well, Miss Endicott, do you consider yourself qualified to conduct the Press Chronicle's family page?
I'd like to try.
Oh, very well. I'll give you a test assignment. If you do it, well, the job is yours.
Now, look, Pete,
It's only fair to Miss Endicott, Tony.
Yes, I'd much rather, Tony, if you don't mind. I don't want any doubt in Mr. Faraday's mind as my competence.
Ah, that's the spirit. Miss Endicott, the trouble with this town is that there are too many dogs biting men. That's not news. I want to see a few men biting dogs. That's news.
Well, what am I supposed to do about it?
Well, that's up to you, but bring me in a good story. Bite a dog yourself.
Now, what kind of an assignment do you call that?
That, my dear Tony, was merely an illustration.
Oh.
But she's supposed to run a woman's page, social gossip, recipes, advice to the lovesick, not look for front-page banner headlines.
If she's a newspaper woman, she'll welcome the
Yes,
opportunity.
you're perfectly right, Tony. I'll take any assignment he gives. I insist on it. I'll show him I can handle any type of story whatsoever.
Ah, that's the spirit. Now, get this.
Yeah?
That forest fire, the FBI suspect us.
What are you talking about? The FBI have nothing to do with it.
Ah, well, all right. The police suspect...
Police, nothing.
All right. I suspected arson. See? And that's enough. Who's giving out the assignment anyway? Now, look, dear. You know who owns that oil field, don't you?
Yes, Mr. Winch, I think.
You think? I'll guarantee it. Now, as you probably know, he has enemies, deadly enemies.
Yeah.
I have a hunch they're out to burn him out. Now, today the wind is blowing from the side of the valley that hasn't been burned toward the oil field. Well, they may try something this very night. You go out there, snoop around.
Right.
Okay. Now, you bring me back a story that'll set the world on fire.
It's been nice of you to come out here in the hills with me, Tony, but it seems like an awful waste of time somehow.
Oh, you didn't have to do this, Jane. You're already hired. Besides, this is just a fairy tale, a wild goose chase. Come on, let's go back to the car. It's late. It's getting cold.
Ooh, it's getting chilly, isn't it?
Yeah, you should have been with me last night covering the fire. It was so cold, my red flannels turned blue.
Oh. Hey, look across the valley. That fire certainly blackened the whole side of that mountain.
I'll tell you what. We'll stop by at the sheriff's office and get some figures on the cost of the timber ruin. That'll be enough meat for a story for tomorrow's issue anyway. Come on, let's get back to the road.
Okay. Tony.
What's wrong?
I could have sworn I saw a man crouching there on the top of those rocks ahead of us. He seemed to be watching us.
I don't see a thing.
He's gone now.
Oh, it's probably just a shadow.
No. It was too clear.
That came from behind us.
It's gone now. Tony, you think we're being followed?
Well, who would want to follow us?
I don't know, but after what Mr. Flaherty said that...
Hey, there's more than one and they're trying to stalk us. Come on, give me a hand.
Okay.
We're getting out of here.
Oh!
Oh, gun, stand we are, Jane. Let them come, whoever it is.
Don't make a move, either of you.
Tony!
Oh, that's Sheriff Johnson.
Keep covered, man.
Hiya, Sheriff. Hey, what's the idea of the fireworks? Somebody's liable to get hurt.
Oh, don't you, huh? What? Miss Endicott, what are you doing here?
I'm on assignment with Mr. Jervis, Sheriff.
You?
Yes, I'm with the Press Chronicle now. What's wrong?
Well, I ain't quite sure yet. What are you looking for?
We want to take a look at the fire damage from across the valley. You can see it all from here. Well, who'd you think we were? Why'd you shoot? What's cooking?
Nothing. Yet. I got a telephone call a while ago saying that somebody was going to be here about this time and try to set the woods afire again. And then you came along.
Telephone call?
From whom?
He didn't say. We traced it to a telephone booth in a pool parlor full of bums.
Ah, it's just somebody trying to be funny.
Well, he won't think it's funny
There he
if
is
I
with those rocks.
Oh, where?
On that hill, the man who was watching us, he's running away.
Let's go, boys. Get him! Come on, boys. Get him! Well, whoever it was, he got away all right. Anybody find anything? Not a thing. Well, you'd better be getting on back, the both of you. There'll be guards posted through the woods tonight. If you run into them, you're liable to be shot. Happy New Year. Come on, boys. Sweet fellow.
I wonder if for once Pete's hunch is right, that there was actually an attempt to burn the oil field.
I think not.
Oh? Why not? You didn't recognize that guy in the hill, did you?
No, but,
I have a pretty good idea who it was.
Who?
Tony. I didn't want to mention this while the sheriff was around, but I've been hiding this under my coat. Look. Recognize it?
I'll say I do. Where'd you find it?
Over there by those rocks where we saw him.
Oh, come on. Pete will get a kick out of this. He certainly will.
Yes, he certainly will.
Well, for the love of Mike, Tony, have you been out with Jane all this time? Well, I might have known. Look, dear, weren't you supposed to get this story by your lonesome?
Well, I did want to, Mr. Flaherty, but Mr. Jervis insisted
She doesn't
that
have to apologize. What's that you're writing, Pete?
Never mind. It just proves my point. Miss Endicott, if you weren't a rank novice, Tony wouldn't offer any help at all. I'm sorry, dear, but you won't do.
But, Mr. Flaherty, I did get a story, and I'd have gotten it if he hadn't been with me.
Yeah?
And it's a Lulu.
Well, spill it.
I want to say one thing, Mr. Flaherty. You were right about your suspicions of arson. We ran into at least 50 men hiding in the hills, armed to the teeth. The sheriff and a posse were out there after them, and you should have heard the shooting. They had shotguns and machine guns.
Now, wait a minute. Hold on there. If there's one thing I can't forgive in a reporter, it's deliberate faking.
But, Mr. Flaherty...
Why, you shock me, Miss Endicott. Haven't you ever heard of newspaper ethics?
But, Mr. Flaherty...
Not another word. I know what happened. I just returned from the sheriff's office. There was only one person. And they never even got close to him. My dear girl, you must be nuts.
Oh, not her, but you must be nuts.
Huh?
Give him his hat, Jane.
Here you are, Mr. Flaherty. We found it in the hills where you dropped it.
What?
There's only one fedora like that in the whole wide world. And if the sheriff had seen it before we did, you'd be...
Wait till the press services get the news of how an editor tried to fake a story by sending a cub reporter out on a phony assignment.
Huh?
Then telling the sheriff the woods were full of crooks. And then parking himself on a hill to watch the whole thing himself.
Now, wait a minute.
Oh, squirm worm.
Oh, my dear girl, you mustn't make irresponsible statements like that. Why, if it ever got out, why, it would ruin me. That is, Mr. Jervis and myself and the Press Chronicle. Now, suppose we let well enough alone and handle the story entirely from the sheriff's point of view, huh? Yes? Well, after all, my dear, as woman's page editor of the Press Chronicle, I hardly think you'd want to imperil its existence, would you, at $25 a week?
Well, I don't know if...
Yeah, that's the spirit. I knew I could depend on you.
But why did you do it?
My dear girl, as a newspaperman of the old school, let me give you a piece of valuable advice. When the march of time slows down in a town like this, give it the hot foot.
Yeah, in other words, Janie, means if there isn't any local news, make it, even if you have to murder your grandmother.
Well, that isn't exactly ethical, is it, Mr. Flaherty?
Ethical, she says.
Mm-hmm. Come on, Jane, I'll buy you a hot dog.
Say, that's news.
News? What's news?
Girl bites dog.
More about Jane Endicott in just a moment.
By Jane Endicott. Girl bites dog.
The story of Jane Endicott, reporter, is brought to you over these same stations every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at the same time. It's Tom Hanlon speaking. Hear ye, hear ye. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.